risk management, because they need to be sure that they source, say, deforestation free. So they are sorting out which farms are actually not near forests. And it's a complex thing. It's not necessarily only the way up. I mean, it's
long term, that's good. For short term, you're right.
yeah, there you go. So that's why we are also heavily investing into adaptation on the side of the producer countries, because many smallholders, they will be out of business because they cannot comply to these new regulations. You know? So there's a
She's definitely the most overlaid because we're not gonna stop at 1.5. Good morning. We good? Okay. Hi, I'm Erin Baker, Time Magazine's climate correspondent. Thank you so much for coming here to join us this morning. We have a bit of a packed session, so I'm going to go straight into it. Here at COP, we have heard time and again that the tipping point is near 1.5. Now, one of the more unacknowledged parts of taking us past 1.5, of course, is emissions from meat and dairy industries. So today's conversation is going to look at how some countries and NGOs are creating opportunities and alternatives to help shift diets, not away from meat and dairy, but towards a less meat and dairy heavy diet. And we're going to do that looking at the roles of philanthropic players and governments. We're going to start first with a very small, but in this panel, very represented country, the Netherlands, that is punching above its weight in the world of agriculture. The Netherlands, which is smaller than many US states, is the second largest per capita exporter of food in the world. But in addition to traditional agriculture, the Netherlands is also one of the most innovative food ecosystems in the world, home to the Dutch researchers that introduced the world to cultivated meat 10, 12 years ago now, meat made from cells without slaughter or any humane issues. We are lucky to have a member of the Dutch government here today to tell us more about the steps that they are taking to push us in that direction. So I'd like to introduce Vice Minister for Foreign Trade and Development Aid, Stephen Collett. Vice Minister, thank you for joining us today, and especially on short notice. We appreciate you carving some time out for us. You have been working on economic development and trade for 2 decades in a multilateral, bilateral, and private sector, including as a diplomat in both Asia and Africa? Right, okay. As part of your work on international trade, you have promoted the Netherlands' agricultural sector and the need for sustainable value chains. I am sure that the innovative agri-food ecosystem that the Netherlands has built has been core to many of those conversations. In particular, the Netherlands is a global leader on food tech and alternative proteins. Can you take a few minutes to tell us about the work the Dutch are doing to lift up the complementary proteins, including some of your large public investments in that sector?
Well, thank you very much, Erin, and good day, everyone. Fantastic to be here in this small but cramped space, and that's always the best spaces to be in during these big conferences. Yes, indeed. Well, the Dutch government is responsible, like any government, for not only feeding its people, but also ensuring that the food systems are sustainable and fit for the future. And well, as you explained, we feel an extra responsibility here, given our global position in this space. Now, I think it's very logical for everyone in this room that the food system we are having at the moment is by no means sustainable and future-proof, right? So I think if we all globally consume the way the Dutch do, and we are only a small country in that way, I think we would need about like 3.6 times what we have available on the planet. So if we would globally do this, so that's very clear. And food consumption, as you know, is 1/3 of this biocapacity. So we have a tall order. We have a big job ahead of us, and it's clear that the food system is in a state of crisis. So to continue sustainably feeding the world, we will need to make some fundamental changes and take bold choices. Now, part of it, not all of it, but part of it is around innovation and technological innovation. We have a so-called protein transition strategy, and want to shift protein consumption from the current 60 to 40 animal to vegetable ratio today to at least 50 to 50 by 2030. Now, and those animal proteins we still consume, we need to be producing as sustainably as possible, of course. And we hope to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 10 to 15% in this way. So, and then, of course, we want to go further to 40-60, so to reverse the current order. Now, how to do that? Indeed, part of it is around innovations, and that part is what we talk about today. And I think there we want to talk a bit about this protein strategy which we're implementing. Cultivated meat, right, and plant-based meat alternatives. Several actors in the Netherlands are working on this, from Wageningen University, Delft University, you might know them, to companies like Moza Meat and Meatable are here today. And these innovations allow us to produce proteins more efficiently, with lower emissions and ecosystem impacts. So therefore, my government invests about 60 million euros in educating the right people to actually do work in cellular agriculture, to innovate, to research, upskill. And moreover, we make it possible for companies to have tastings prior to market introduction, to test consumer experiences of cultivated meat and fish. And next to technological innovations, of course, we need systemic innovations. And I think COP is full about that language. And it's really about examining, transforming the broader system that underpins our food systems. What are we eating? How do we eat in the future? How does that affect our footprints? Now, I think this protein transition, including the cellular meats, is a way, not the way, but as a way forward, which need to be promoted. We are indeed, we feel responsibility as a global exporter to also sort of be front runners in this space, and we are very proud to be able to invest into this. And I'm very curious to hear from all of you how you see this. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Can you... You know, there is still a lot about the cultivated meat industry that is not yet entirely proven: sustainability, marketability. Can you expand a little on why your government has made such a bold investment in this area, with those questions still remaining?
I think the only way to improve it and to prove it is actually to be on top of it. And I think, well, being a part and partner of these innovations, we can actually examine how to make them as environmentally friendly as possible and sustainably as possible all throughout the value chain. So being part of that is a way forward. And of course, in the way we are sort of investing into this, we also see to it. And I think another thing is it's a given that at least cellular meat is not killing animals, right? So there's a no regret there.
Definitely. And furthermore, it's not just cell ag. We also are looking at plant-based foods. Right. What else are you guys doing to accelerate just the adoption and introduction of plant-based foods?
Right. Well, there we partner in the entire value chain with public and private partners to see what crops do we need to grow where, how do we actually process them, what is the footprint of that processing, how can we transform them into to plant-based products which are appealing to consumers, test them with consumers. So there's a whole sort of series of interventions which we follow up in order to, next to the cellular, also promote plant-based proteins.
Thank you so much for your time. We're going to invite two other panelists up.
Looking forward. Thank you very much.
And I'd like to introduce Alessandro Cruvinel. I'm sorry if I said it wrong. Director of Innovation at the Brazilian Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock. Is that your spot? Yes. Okay. And as well as Dr. Andy Jarvis, Director of Future of Food at the Bezos Earth Fund. And yes, that's your spot too. Okay. And thank you. And Mirti Gosker, the Managing Director of the Good Food Institute, APAC, right? Yes. Okay. Great. Give me a moment. I think, Alessandro, let's start with you. you have worked in, sorry to put you on the spot, about every aspect of the agri-food system that there is, ranging from animal breeding, logistics and supply chains, for multinationals like Unilever, and most recently with the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock in Brazil as the Director of Innovation. This is kind of an unlikely coincidence because recently we've begun hearing about Brazil shifting some of the traditional focal points around agriculture and seeing some interesting signals, including JBS buying a Spanish cultivated meat company and building a $60 million cellular agricultural research facility in Brazil. Fill us in on how your job in Brazil is looking at playing a bigger role when it comes to the complementary process of alternative proteins.
Yeah, so thank you, Erin. First of all, thank you for having me here to talk a little bit about what we're doing, what are the strategies that we're developing in Brazil. It's very good also to hear my colleague here from Netherlands and explain. We have another Dutch here, and I work also for New Delivery, so I think Netherlands is present in this session. So regarding the local consumptions, I would say that Brazil, we in general, we follow the European and the North American market. Okay, so what we can say, for example, the European market is a 5.2 billion euros market, but it's increasing 6%, around 6% per year. And the Brazilian market for alternative proteins is only 200 million euros, but it's increasing 42% per year. So it means that we are going to keep running fast, I think, and I hope, and I really would like to see this movement. But I really would like to talk a little bit more about our alternative protein plan that we are developing in Brazil. Well, that is currently in development stage, but we already have the engagement of many stakeholders, and we are drawing how this strategy is going to move forward. And we already engaged the industry, academy, the governments, but now we decide also to the new government that we start right now with President Lula and Minister Carlos Fávaro. We decided also to engage other ministries, the Minister of Commerce and Industry, and also the Minister of Science and Technology, because it makes sense to have a more strong policy, public policy, and. Because, of course, we have a huge responsibility and inspiration goals, so we need to have more people on board. And as you know, Brazil feeds almost a billion people in the world. So in this room, one of each 7, 8 people here is fed by Brazilian food. So it's a huge responsibility. I used to say for my colleagues from Brazil that we are in the Ministry of Agriculture. We are the Ministry of Agriculture for Brazil, but we are also the Ministry of Agriculture for almost 1 billion people. So it's a huge responsibility in terms of what we are doing over there. But we are very focused on commodities. Yeah? Different from Netherlands, we are very focused on commodities and primary sector. To give you an example, in 1996, the agri-food, energy, and fiber industry was 35% of the agricultural GDP in general. 34%. But this year we reduced it for only 23%. So of course it means that the agriculture production in Brazil is increasing, but also the industry is also reducing. So we need to tackle this and to improve the value from our products. It means that we need to draw a strategy and add value to our agricultural products and boost the food industry. So it's very important. One of the strategies is this alternative protein plan. And how are we building this over there? We are very focused on innovation, of course. I have also 12 years working in Embrapa, so leading with innovation in Embrapa. And you have 2,000 researchers, so you have all the structure to do that. But we have also all the private sector that we are having a lot of investment. So innovation is central for this plan. Regulation is also very important. All the themes regarding labeling and the difference between alternative protein and conventional protein, etc. You know that there is a lot. It's a kind of hotspot, and of course, regulation is very important too. We are also designing the connectivity between initiatives, companies, individuals, academy, institutions, and government with a network. So it's very important to have everybody engaged. And we are also developing a pilot plant network. We don't have many pilot plants. It's crucial to have the development of new products, and capacity building and governance. So after that, what I would say is that the main goal of this plan is to diversify the Brazilian products. So this is our strategy for the alternative protein industry, and added value and complexity for our products that we export, and mostly develop the ingredients for plant-based foods for any market that needs the supply. And of course, with a very sustainable based agriculture. And I can talk a little bit more about our approach for sustainable agriculture, but I think I will finish here to give time for my colleagues here.
Great, and we can go back to that as well. I like this idea that cellular agriculture, food innovation works in parallel with conventional food. They're not in competition. So I think that's a really good thing that we should follow up later on. Meanwhile, Mirte, as a Dutch person living in Singapore, I think, and you're working for GFI APAC, a Good Food Institute. I'm sure everyone knows who they are. I think what people are, Singapore is also another world leader in food innovation. And I think a lot of people may not be familiar with how it came about. So maybe you can give us some insights into how Singapore got there.
Sure, and thank you for having me on this panel. It's a very different story from Brazil with all your agricultural powerhouse. Singapore, unfortunately, has almost no arable land, right? 1%, and it's a tiny country by itself already. So the main reason that Singapore is an emerging food tech leader is its food security. Currently, we're importing over 90% of our consumption of our food. And Singapore has a policy which is called 30 by 30. And the idea is that we're producing 30% of our caloric intake within the country borders by 2030. That is a huge challenge. And therefore, Singapore is super keen on investing large amounts of money into any innovations that is going to lead us there. So it's also urban farming, vertical farming, but alternative proteins are obviously a large part of that bucket. So there is an R&D program called the Singapore Food Story. The first tranche was 144 million Singapore dollars, and there is a second tranche now of 165 million Singapore dollars that went into these different areas of innovation. And food safety and alternative proteins, I think, make up about half of that. So Singapore is very, very keen in being a world leader, and it's not just R&D that we're investing in. It's also taking a leadership role in regulation. So as most of you know, Singapore was the first country in the world to approve the sales of a cultivated meat product. It was 2.5 years ahead of the runner-up, the United States of America. 2.5 years. Singapore didn't exist 70 years ago, just so you know, right? This is a massive, massive achievement. And I think that Singapore is is basically a superstar in leading the world. They did it with water, because water was one of their main issues. And now countries are coming to Singapore to learn how to save their own water challenges. And Singapore is very keen on having this role and sharing their lessons learned and their best practices with the world on food security, and specifically on alternative proteins.
Thank you, Mirta. Just for context, can you give us a sense of where we are on the 30 by 30? Like what percent of calories do we have now in Singapore?
Unfortunately, I can't. I'm afraid this is a little bit of a black box for me. I'm sure the government knows very well, and with them continuing their strive for this goal, I hope we're on the right path. But it's not easy, right? It's a huge challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one thing to make the goals, it's another thing entirely to reach them, as we know very well at COP. Andy, the Bezos Earth Fund, obviously something thinking very large picture. What are you doing in this space, and how do you see it going forward in terms of your own investments and philanthropy?
Okay, no, so I mean, I'm the director for the future of food in the Bezos Earth Fund, and 1 year into the job, and we started looking, well, what do? We work towards nature, benefits, climate solutions, and people at the heart of that approach. And when we use that equation, it's an absolute no-brainer to look at the issue, the broader issue of what we call sustainable protein. And just as the Vice Minister said, there is no scenario on this planet of business as usual where we can provide the same amounts, the growing demand for meat, dairy, leather, etc., under the current systems, right? So what we've taken is a very much, we call it a kind of all of the above approach, and we need to double down on everything. And so we are looking at livestock, and there are enormous opportunities in the short term to reduce emissions, reduce methane, make this more sustainable, reduce the land footprint, reduce the climate footprint of livestock. There are opportunities for that, but that's not enough. And so the alternative protein side, or what we complementary, I'm growing on the phrase complementary protein as another area that requires vast amounts of investment right now as a global solution to this. So we are very much committed on supporting this complementary protein area. We've been working very closely with GFI and with others and having lots of conversations around the world, and we're really kind of landing on two things that we believe need to happen. One is the real prize is if we have products which for consumers hit cost parity, they hit taste parity, and they're nutritionally equal or better than animal source foods, the market will do the rest, right? And so, that really is the eye on the prize. How do we get towards that? And one of the things, right now, what the sector as a whole is kind of suffering from narratives. It's suffering from attacks from either side. It's very polarized. First of all, we think, we need to take the edge off that and just, this is complementary. And just like companies like JBS are investing $100 million in cultivated meat, we need to see this as multiple solutions need to be brought to the table. So the first thing we're looking at is R&D. How do we get these products better? And so it's still nascent. This is a technology that is very, very young. Bruce always talks about, this is like solar panels in the early 2000s. They were expensive, they were inefficient, and they weren't competitive with fossil fuel energy. We see alternative proteins as the same. So there's a big piece for R&D. How do we get the prices down? How do we get the taste up? And how do we hit the nutritional issues so that this is available and providing health benefits to the population? The second, though, is the translation side of things. I love Singapore. We visited Singapore. It's fantastic, and it's great that they're doing their 30 by 30 initiative. But that's not going to have planetary level impacts. And it really is, if alternative proteins are going to succeed globally, we also need to be thinking about geographic spread of these. And we need to translate products into local needs and tastes, right? And so I had a great conversation with someone from Nigeria. Nigerians love chewy meat, right? And so your tender burgers that are produced in the United States are not going to work for Nigerians. They're not a burger nation, and they like it chewy. So, we need to translate this. And so the other piece is not just improving the kind of technology globally, but also translating that for all of the different contexts that there are. And those contexts you need to be very aware of. There are contexts of overconsumption where we need to switch out and provide complementary proteins. There are countries where it's right now kind of very low consumption with nutritional issues and so on. And there we have to pay super attention to the nutritional side of things. So I think what the second part of what we're looking at is how do we accelerate this in all of these different geographies? And it's, we're excited to be, what I can say, you were trying to get me to make an announcement, and we can't make any announcements now, but what I can say is that watch this space, because in 2024, we're very much looking to move the needle in alternative proteins globally with these two plays.
Excellent. So we all have something to look forward to in 2024. That's encouraging. One of the things about COP is the conversations. I'm sure you're all tired of listening to people talk. We want to hear from you. So let's start a conversation in this room. Is there something somebody wants to raise or add to the conversation to our panel? You're conveniently close.
Thank you. I represent Iceland, and we have a tech solution to natural vitamin B12 biomass. So we use the resources from a neighboring geothermal plant, and we grow a microalgae called spirulina, right? And it has nutritional parity to beef. So how would you suggest we reach out to people like yourselves so that we can be known? Because we're a very new company. We have great volume potential. And yeah, we think we have something very unique. I don't know of any other B12 biomass. Maybe someone can tell me about that.
I mean, putting me on the spot. No, I mean, I think what all companies like yours need. There are so many companies right now with amazing potential technologies, and it's the sector's in a difficult period. I mean, you had kind of in the pandemic this flood of money coming in, and now this immediate expectation for returns on profits and products in market and market share and so on. I mean, we see it a little bit, it's a dangerous period right now for the industry. And it needs to get through this kind of, I won't say valley of death, but, get through this hard period now where the kind of expectation is very high, but the ability to deliver is still really early. This is not an easy thing to do. So, I mean, I think one of the things is, we don't invest in companies particularly, but what we do need is to create the enabling environment and the de-risking so that public money, we need to shake public money out. It's fantastic that the Netherlands are standing up and saying this is needed. There are very few governments willing to do that. One of the strategies that we have is how do we de-risk a little bit so that governments are coming up and saying this is important and it needs investment. The public and the philanthropic investment in all proteins is practically zero. And these things won't work if it's entirely just venture capital flowing in. It needs patient capital, it needs enabling environment, it needs policy, it needs regulation, everything that Brazil is talking about. All of these things. So our commitment is to work to create that enabling environment for companies like yours and the many others that are doing amazing things to succeed. De-risking, getting public support, policy, and so on and so forth.
Could you speak more about the infrastructure investment? Because you're absolutely right that the industry is in the nascent stage, and we've kind of gotten through this early R&D period with venture capital, and now we're looking to do infrastructure. So public funding, as you said, is non-existent. Philanthropic funding is non-existent, but also debt capital is not available, precisely because of the stage of the industry. So what levers, what resources can we pull specifically for infrastructure, because this industry will not achieve volumes that will get us to a competitive place without infrastructure?
Do you want to do two questions and then answer? Maybe we do two and then, okay, Bruce?
This is for any of the panelists, but especially for you, Mr. Curvino. I'm Bruce with the Good Food Institute. GFI Brazil is just so incredibly grateful for all of the work that the Brazilian government is doing here and really values the partnerships that you listed with JBS and BRF and Marfrig and ADM and sort of industry and ministry, and your sort of bring everybody to the table philosophy, I think, is just spot on. One thing that we're wondering about, further to Andy's observation that this is a very sort of nascent technology on both the plant-based side and the cultivated side. One thing we have been thinking a lot more about is blends. And I know that at least ADM and Cargill are super enthusiastic about blends. The idea of taking like 80% soy or even 50% soy, although ADM was saying even at 80% soy, 20% actual animal meat, they can get to price and taste parity now. How would Brazil look at that as sort of a step toward 100% plant-based or 100% cultivated to get over the price and taste issues that Andy was talking about?
Thank you both. Why don't we start with Alessandro, and then we'll go to your question as well.
Thank you. I will start talking about the infrastructure, talking about what we are doing in Brazil, what we are planning to do. Because you are right, infrastructure is a bottleneck, of course, it's a new industry. But what we are trying to do is connect the investments, the academy, the institutes, the public and private sector together, and we are building a network to help that. We are we really believe in the pilot plants and the use of pilot plants, the opened pilot plants that we can use. Of course, in Europe, we have a huge experience with this kind of strategies. In Brazil, we are not doing this very well. So we believe in this kind of investments. We are making some investments right now directly from the government for the universities, building these pilot plants. And the idea is to have a bigger network and help all this ecosystem environment to boost this ecosystem environment and help to have the results that we need. Regarding your question, if I understand, first you talked about blend, yeah, plant and blended, yeah, blended, mixed. I really, well, I think it's. I used to be vegetarian for 7 years, in the 80s, where it was not a trend or anything. And I think when the consumer takes the decision in terms of what he's going to do, if he's going to eat plant-based or not, he has his values or what the decision that he's taking. So I think the blend market, I personally do not believe very much in this kind of market as a consumer-driven market. Maybe for the industry, okay, if it makes sense in terms of reduced cost or the food security, okay, I think it can be an important point. But as we were talking in the beginning, as Erin asked me about how are we going to make this movement in terms of the plant-based, but it doesn't mean that we are going to replace the traditional proteins 100%. It is not, of course, even talking about Brazil, that we are the second bigger exporter of beef, so it doesn't make sense. So the policy that we are building, of course, we need to be careful in terms of the complementarity of the proteins, and also how can we develop this market at the same time that we also protect the traditional market. Because there is some, of course, the labeling that we say, you can put in the labeling this milk kill cows, for example. This milk is, all the pressure that they put in the label. So we need to protect the traditional market also. At the same time, we need to develop the new market. So I think, of course, and I believe that both markets we will survive and we will have a space for everybody. Okay, and we are prepared as Brazil also to supply Singapore, supply any other countries. We are having this policy to be prepared to achieve these markets, also to add value for our commodities.
So, me first, yeah?
I have to say, your chair is shorter than everyone else's, and it's driving me nuts to see a woman lower than the men.
Oh, sorry. I agree. Thank you. There we go. Hoppa, on top. This is where I should be. So, first of all, blends, we found that in Asia, blends are actually very like people are very susceptible to blends, and I'm personally quite bullish about it because, like, if we have more conventional meat producers using plant-based ingredients in their meat, that is an opportunity for the plant-based meat producers and the ingredient providers to actually skill up, and with that bring down the cost, and then the full 100% plant-based meat products can be more affordable as well. So I think it's a good stepping stone for the point in the market that we are. Also wanted to share one idea that my team is looking at with regards to infrastructure, which I think is super exciting. We are looking into advanced market shaping initiatives. And that basically means that you have a government or a philanthropist or a combination of the two that are guaranteeing offtake of a product for a certain price or a certain level of taste and nutrition parity, and therefore de-risking the investment that the producer needs to do upfront. So they can build their facilities or they can invest in R&D to get to that level of taste or nutrition parity because they know that they will have a guaranteed offtake. We're working with somebody that did this for vaccines. He did 150 deals or initiatives, and only once had the guarantor had to step in for 10%. All the other times, it was fixed by the market. So I think this is a very, very exciting opportunity to see whether we can apply that to the alternative protein sector. Advanced Market Shaping Initiative.
Let me tell a story that links the two of you. I was sat in Singapore with Meta, and we were in Tyndall, right? One of the kind of, so Tyndall have products and they sell actually in Aldi in Germany. And the story was they would buy soybeans from Brazil, would go to China, they'd get extracted the protein there, it would go down to Singapore, it would get manufactured and then ship over to Germany to sell, right? You can look at that, that's a market infrastructure problem, or you can look at it as an enormous opportunity. And, I think Brazil has figured out that it's an enormous opportunity, and I think, there's the infrastructure side. Yes, there is challenges right now, but I think the world should be seeing this as an enormous opportunity. The reports put alt proteins as, having potential market value of 800 billion, is it? By 2035? Is that true?
I mean, 700 billion by 2050.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the 2035 number is.
So, I mean, it's an enormous market opportunity there. I mean, the other thing is, like in cultivated meat, everyone talks about the cost of the infrastructure, the bioreactors, all of these things. I mean, right now, the whole thing is based on pharma-grade technology, right? Pharma was made to create tiny little vials like this of pharmaceutical products. The infrastructure, that is not appropriate for alternative proteins. And I think, that's one area that we're very much looking at. How do we get the price down? How do we create new infrastructure or adopt infrastructure that's kind of stranded assets that we can use to be providing scale? And that will drastically reduce those infrastructure costs.
Yes, let's take 2 more questions and then we'll go back. Yeah?
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Tim Rijzo. I'm from the Netherlands, working for the Plant-Based Treaty. My question will be addressed to, Meta, you and Andrew. You mentioned stranded assets already, and you also mentioned that we could see this beginning emerging industry as the hurdles that the energy sector was dealing with. Now, I have 2 questions, but I'll blend them in one. A lot of the animal assets, animal production facilities, will probably be stranded assets. And I think in the Netherlands we've seen that we were supposed to reduce our livestock staple with 50%. That didn't work because 25 billion was allocated to buy out farmers. The policy didn't, there was no public support for the policy. I mean, destroying tax money is never popular, and the farmers were also not really keen. So I guess we need to get the animal farmers on board Now, I'm working with a couple of organizations in the UK, in the US, and Swiss, and they actually help these animal farmers that have these huge barns, which are, laboratory conditions, and you could then do tons of things with these, animal barns when you retrofit them or repurpose them. For example, you can grow plants there for human consumption. You could grow plants there that you could use for the bio-based economy. But most interestingly, and that's a topic I kind of miss in the alternative protein discussions, is the role of mycelia. They have a very meaty structure. We haven't discovered a lot of it. And another additional benefit of mycelia is that they grow very well in these previous like chicken and pig barns, that you could just take the animals out and put the vertical farms in there. So I was wondering, is that the role of mycelia and the role of repurposing animal barns that are probably stranded asset, is that being researched at all by any of your teams or institutions?
You want to add another question or just start there?
We can start here. We did a little bit of research on this in my team, and especially the downstream part of the production process can be retrofitted quite easily. Actually, there's a lot that you can just use. So in these plants that are currently producing meat products, at least the downstream part is very easily retrofitted to fit plant-based meats, because in the end, right now, we're at least creating the exact same product, right? Just made from different ingredients. So there's definitely a huge opportunity. And your other question about mycelia? Yeah, there is, so the fermentation pillar, right? We are looking at the whole sector as 3 pillars, although we know that it's becoming more and more hybrid firms. But fermentation, whether it's biomass, traditional or precision fermentation, it's booming. And I personally have a lot of hope for this specific pillar, because I think that, there's so much that we don't know yet. There are trillion microbes out there, and we just need to find the right ones to create those ingredients that are making the plant-based meat products taste exactly the same as their conventional parts. Sorry? And dairy, absolutely, yes.
I'll get controversial. I think farmers have been weaponized right now. In the US, more than 50% of farmers lost money last year. The food system is not kind to farmers right now. So that's the first thing. And I think they get weaponized by interest groups. And I really would love real farmer voices in this. That's the first thing. The second is the plant-based meats and all of this. What people forget is that that's farmed. It's plant-based. There are farmers behind it. There are farmers producing this, right? And I think that again, that needs to be brought out a lot more. When Beyond Meat, someone told me when Beyond Meat floated and they had their projections of market share and so on, it created a new opportunity the size of Texas to produce pea protein, right? And that's a farming opportunity. And I think it's everything. All the narrative is divisive, and it's weaponizing farmers against this, when there are actually enormous opportunities for farmers from this. And I think more needs to be done about, you talk about just transition and so on and so forth. I think it's more than that. It's an opportunity for rural areas.
I'm actually quite loud, but thank you. Just be screaming into a mic. Hi, I'm Bika Hirnandani. I work with regulatory affairs with a German cell-based company. We do cell-based milk. There's some regulatory environments, I've been studying Singapore, the US, which are far more friendly, regulations are easy to understand. And then there's the EU, which is a little bit more challenging. So I'm curious, we have someone from government, 2 large organizations, I work with GFI, so I'd love to know what advice do you have for a startup on how do we navigate this regulatory environment? How do we, get ourselves to market?
And I'd like to add something to that from my own side. My adopted country, Italy, has also tried to ban this. So I would love to hear your thoughts on how do we navigate governments that are going on one side or the other.
Yeah. regulation is, of course, is a big issue, as I mentioned before. And what we are dealing right now, of course, we have a process. The food agency, they need to make a public consultation to understand if this change in the regulator will fit well and receive the feedbacks. After that, they have received all this information, try to build a kind of proposal of law, and after that it goes to the parliament, etc. And in the parliament, we don't know what's going to happen in the finish because they have them all decisions. And of course, we have pressure for all the sides. So, but in general, we try to have the regulatory more, that we don't need to go to transform in a law, that we can decide inside the ministries for more technical issues. This is the way that we are dealing in Brazil, and how to prevent to have some kind of problem that we could have in new ingredients or new products, So I would say that it's a very important point. We as in the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Health, and Ministry of Environment, we work together building this regulatory process. It's not easy, and there's a lot of issues, a lot of fight in terms of different markets, especially in Brazil. For example, the cultivated meat, the last 2 months, the parliamentarians, they start to say, no, we don't want cultivated meat in Brazil, so let's make a law to prohibit the cultivated meat in Brazil. So, it's very exciting. Yeah? it's a very interesting movement, and we play this game. So we need to play this game and talk to a lot of people, talk to the parliamentarians, talk to the guys from the other ministries, and try to build something that will be good for our country. So this is the way that works over there. Okay.
So if I can add, so the role of public servants is obviously to ensure prosperity for their citizens, right? Do you want your citizens to have the choice themselves of what kind of meat they want to eat? I think that answer should be yes. Do you want your people that whatever they eat is safe for consumption? I think that answer is yes. So, like if I look at Italy with their cultivated meat ban, they're just putting themselves like backward, right? It just doesn't make sense. If we look at food security is going to be a bigger and bigger issue for the planet, not just for a single country. Even though they have lots of agricultural lands, this is not a national problem. This is a problem that the Earth together has to solve. We can't feed people with the meat they want. In APAC, we have a 78% rise in meat and seafood demand. That's projected for the period of 2018 to 2050. We have a growing population, a population that becomes more affluent. We don't have enough earth, right? Right now, we are using 2/3 of our agricultural lands, which is the size of China plus India times 2 plus Indonesia. That's the size. That's the land mass that we're using to produce feed to animals, or to grow or to graze the animals, and it only supplies us with 1/3 of our protein supply. So 1/3 of the agricultural, 25% of our agricultural lands is used to provide 1/3 in plant protein. So it's just impossible to continue to consume meat the way we currently do if we produce it the same way we do by 2050. So we need to change, that's evident. So what do you do then as a country? Do you say, okay, we don't like this sounds artificial, we don't want to go there, and then you ban it, and then other countries will go ahead, they will move ahead. Netherlands investing 60 million into cultivated meat sector buildup. Singapore investing much more. These are the countries that are gonna have a massive advantage. And what happens if China does that? China is currently producing almost all of our solar panels. What if they are producing almost all of our meat? Something to think about.
Anyone else here? Or I'll go in with my own. One of the things we've been talking about is these innovations, these technological innovations, this huge investment, which is easy in the global north because we have the money. How do we bridge that divide between the needs of protein, perhaps in the global south, and what we're producing here? And how do we bring those two together? I can ask the audience or you guys.
I mean, I talked a little bit of that. I mean, I think you need homegrown ecosystems. You need to build up those business ecosystems, just as my Nigerian friend said. You know, we're not a burger nation. You know, I think that is first of all very important. And you know, this gets kind of pushed, or it gets kind of presented as, or not even presented. It gets cornered into being a kind of global north industry, and I think that needs to be broken down. This is a global industry that needs building, and that needs diversity, and it needs countries from lower middle income through to emerging economies, developing economies, through to the developed. And so I do think it needs that, just like it's diversification here, it's diversification of the products and the markets that you're serving, and that's absolutely critical.
Absolutely. Does anybody have another question? One of the things I'm curious about, we've been talking about the role of feeding humans, but we also have an enormous industry that needs to feed animals, either pets or animals for like, fish. Where does this fit in feeding animal agriculture that we still need?
Just to understand, we're talking about, oh, yes, we are feeding humans and feeding animals, and what's the point?
About alternative proteins. We're talking normally about a human destination. Well, is there a role for animal food and protein? So I'm talking about the pet market or just aquaculture for that matter. Is there a role, is there a destination that we can start talking about in that way?
Yeah. Well, of course, those are two different markets. It's difficult to figure out exactly what's going to be in the future. We have a lot of technology that we talk about today, fermentation, etc., and then plant cultivation. So, you know, but in general, I don't know if I said before, but I'm a farmer also. I'm a dairy farmer, so very controversial in terms of. But and as my colleague Andy said here, it's not easy also for the farmers. Every pressure that we have in a daily basis. But in terms of feed the animals, I don't know what I could say. Considering that this market will be permanent in terms of in the future, we are going to have just a stable share between both markets. Of course, we need to be aware of the food supply also for the cattle. But in my point of view, we need to focus on sustainability in general for both, for humans and for the cattle in general, for all the animals.
I think the statistic is I read like a teenager, a pet dog has approximately the carbon footprint of a teenager. I have a teenager, and she eats a hell of a lot. So I worry about it, and needs a lot of rides to friends' houses and so on. So, you know, high maintenance. And that is an enormous footprint. And I mean, you know, to a certain extent, it's an under talked about area where pet food is the easiest place to actually start. It's the easiest market because at least, you know, you don't have all the sensitivity and the cultural value of the taste, right? I mean, I'm sure you need something that you know, pets are going to eat. So I've heard of a number of kind of innovative things that there's everything from insects through to actual, you know, plant-based pet foods and things. And I think that's it's an under talked about area that does need further development.
Just a small note. We partner a lot with countries in Africa, on the African continent, and I think for protein, aquaculture is quite important. And there we invest in or de-risk several enterprises to actually make the feed into aquaculture worthwhile with insects, for instance, based on organic waste. So I think there we can make a full circle in terms of the animal feed, and with a great potential, I think, for food security. Thanks.
Yeah, the black soldier larva fly, your fly larva. Yeah, I like that project. And this idea of cell-cultivated mouse treats for cats. I think that's adorable. And you touched on something there about using maybe animal or pet food to get into acceptance in the consumer market. I mean, Mirta, Singapore has had cultivated meat for the longest time. Can you talk a little bit about consumer adoption and what were the challenges and what you think still needs to be solved and what the rest of the world can learn from Singapore?
Sure. First of all, I think we should stay away from the pet food, because I think it could actually be used against, right? Nobody wants to eat dog food, so I'm always discouraging companies that are using it as a stepping stone to talk about it. Okay, so cultivated meat is being served in Singapore, but in very, very low quantities. So I don't think that we have a real answer on what is like the consumer adoption and like what do people say, right? It's just such a limited amount of people that I think it's too early to tell. Singaporeans are very well known for being super excited about any new food item. People will queue up for a new flavor of ice cream. So it has been very well received in Singapore. Also, there's a very high level of trust in the Singapore Food Agency. Tang Yong is standing there in the back, one of the heroes of the cultivated meat coming to life in Singapore. And therefore, people have a high level of trust in the food being a safe product. I know that this in other places could be one of the challenges. But yeah, it is very timely, and we have supported an initiative on risk communication right now, because it takes about 4 positive messages in the media to basically neutralize one negative. Obviously, there are many folks out there that are not super keen on this industry and are trying to put out negative messages on the potential health threats. These are very often not based in science, but convinced that, like you have to explain that, right? And it is a new technology, and people do not understand it to the level of detail that you want them to, but you can't expect them to. So we need to find the right ways to talk about this. So for example, cultivated meat. That is the term that we did research within GFI to find the right term for this, have selected to use, because cultivated sounds like, if you ask people what they think with what resonates with them, you see like cultivation, right? Growing plants and like beautiful grasslands. Something that actually the conventional meat industry did really well, because if you ask my 7-year-old, well, actually he will draw something else, but not my son, but another son, like another kid of 7 years, you ask them to draw where the meat on their plate comes from. They will probably draw a happy pig in a cow in a barn, right? So that narrative is something that the cultivated meat or the alternative protein, complementary protein industry needs to also recreate. And I think we're definitely not there yet. This is something that needs much more attention, but it's super, super important.
Yeah, I just wanted to draw people's attention to the UN Environment Program. Yesterday released a 76-page report on alternative proteins. It's called What's Cooking, and I would encourage people to check it out. And then also mention that Michael Kremer, the Nobel laureate in economics for his work in global development, has pulled together a commission at the University of Chicago, and they're looking at what are solutions to climate adaptation specifically and food security, so looking for solutions in the global south in particular, and one of the 7 very scalable alternatives that they flagged from an adaptation standpoint, just because climate is creating droughts, it's decimating both crop and livestock populations, is alternative proteins. And if any of the 3 of you would like to talk, I mean, we talked a little bit about not allowing this to just be a global north solution. And GFI had a panel about that. You were on the panel, thank you very much, a couple days ago. But if anybody wants to build on the idea of alternative proteins and the Kremer sort of way of thinking about it in terms of adaptation and a solution to malnutrition. I think that'd be fascinating.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, why don't you guys finish up? We're at time, so real quick response from each of you, and then we will send you all onto your way.
Okay, thank you for the question, Bruce. Yes, I think, of course, we're talking about consumer demands, and we need to make the links between all the alternative protein also with sustainability. So as Andy said, we have farmers behind that, and what we are, I can give you an example of what is happening in Brazil, is the bioinput program. So we are having a silent revolution in terms of replace chemicals and fertilizers in our supply chains. So we have the bioinputs program. It's a policy that we started 3 years ago, and we already are replacing, guess how much % of the pesticides? 15% of the pesticides from the Brazilian agriculture we're replacing for micro bioinputs. So it's a huge transformation. And also regarding adaptation, of course, when you take care of your soil, it's very important to have adaptation. And the farmers that are using this kind of technology, regenerative agriculture, sustainable agriculture, they are more resilient to the droughts. So you can see the resilience over that. We have soils with more healthy, so it's very important. Another information regarding the bioanalysis of soil, it's quite new in Brazil. We just launched this technology because usually we just measure the soil in terms of chemical and physical way. Now in Brazil, we have this technology developed by Embrapa. It's the BioS. I put money to transform this technology in e-learning. So I am trying to translate for Spanish and English right now. We are going to launch also this technology to spread this around the world, because it's a very interesting technology that you can analyze your soil with two products. You can understand how is the health of your soil. So I will give these 2 examples. I can give also the third example, the guys that are producing their own inputs on farm. So it's a very revolutionary in Brazil also. The big guys start to do that, and they reduce the cost tremendously. So it's a good news in terms of food security. We have farmers reducing the production cost in 50%. So it's, of course, our goal is trying to replace this for all across the Brazil. And it's not easy, of course, especially for the medium and small farmers, but the big ones are already on board. They are making them own inputs. We have technology. We're developing all this technology. And just to summarize, what I've seen also in future that connected what we're talking here in terms of alternative protein and the farmers. I believe that we are going to have a trend for the farmers have also their own small industries make the first process inside the farms. The on-farm new industry, this is also something that we are drawing over there. To spread the industry, don't have a lot of concentration of industry in only one part. It can be an alternative also for the question from my colleague from Netherlands in terms of add value, and also because what I think is, as the farmer already start to have his bioinputs biofactory, why not have also a biorefinery or bioprocessing his product, at least for the first stage? So I think it's a trend. We are going to make investments in this now on-farm industrialization. I think it would be the remarks that are good answer for my colleague Bruce. Thank you.
Thank you, Alessandro. Would you like to add anything, Mirta?
On this topic specifically, or?
No, I think we're at time, so just any concluding remarks?
Just any concluding remarks. Well,
no pressure.
Thank you, everybody, for being here, first of all. I really hope that the days that we're all active here at COP, that we can inspire governments to actually really adopt alternative proteins as the climate solution that it is and that it deserves. So there was a 84 times multiple on the investments in renewable, in low carbon vehicles in 2020 alone, compared to all-time investments in alternative proteins. The emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions emitted by the industrial animal agriculture are higher than the total transportation sector combined. So I think that makes the point of why we're doing what we're doing day in, day out. Thank you, everybody.
It's all been said. I'll just say, I mean, this is a tremendously exciting space. It's an imperative that we have to work on this. There is no 1.5 degree pathway forward without a serious hard look at the emissions that are coming from the food system. This is one option that is absolutely, tremendously exciting. And the key is not advocating. No one likes being told what to eat. The key is getting on the shelf sustainable options. And I think that's the responsibility of the sector as a whole, to get those options on the shelves. And then people choose what they want to eat.
Get the items on the shelf, guys. Marching orders. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Thank you to our panel.